Let's take now a closer look at what Mexico can do and the potential economic ripples with Ambassador John Feely. He served as U.S. envoy to Panama from 2016 to 2018, and over his 28-year State Department career, he held senior posts throughout Latin America, including in Mexico. He's now a political analyst for Univision and joins us tonight from Bogota, Colombia. Ambassador Feely, thank you for being with us. I want to ask you now, obviously this isn't the first time that President Trump has tried to apply pressure to Mexico to act, to do more. What has Mexico been doing, if anything, to address the stem of migrants that have been going through their country, and what more can they do before June 10th?
You know, it's a great question because this is not the first time the president has used sanctions or tariffs. He has said many times before that I'm a tariff guy, I'm a sanction guy. The fact is that Mexico has actually done quite a lot and has been doing quite a lot. You know, we're at a net zero immigration with Mexicans right now, meaning there are more Mexicans returning to Mexico than there are going to the United States, whether undocumented or whether documented for just regular cross-border travel. What they've done is they've actually hardened their border at their southern border with Guatemala along the Rio Suchiate in a boarding crossing called Tapachula. And they've stopped upwards of tens of thousands of Central Americans. So the short answer, there's really not a lot they can do before June 10th.
So we have these proposed numbers now in the way of tariffs that could go into effect in a very specific way over the next several months. What would be the overall impact on those kinds of tariffs on the Mexican economy and on trade between the U.S. and Mexico?
Sure. Well, on the Mexican economy, it's incredibly worrisome. Our supply chains, United States, Mexico, and Canada, are incredibly linked. The United States is the #1 destination for upwards of 85% of Mexican exports. As soon as these tariffs go into effect, American importers are going to start to pay more, 5% upward to 25% if by October, if the president is not happy with the results. What that means is American importers may now have to make the decision, do I stop importing from Mexicans? That obviously has a very negative effect on Mexican industry. Or do I continue to import from Mexican exporters and pass those costs along to the American consumer? I think in the short run, what will happen is the supply chains are so integrated, whether we're talking about vehicles, whether we're talking about electronic assemblage, whether we're talking about the agricultural products that come from Mexico, that American importers really aren't going to be able to do anything to change that. Whether or not they pass along the 5% cost by June 10th is a decision that the American private sector is going to have to make. But the key point here is that it's Americans who actually pay the tariffs. And that's one of the reasons why many of us believe that the president has put himself and his USMCA, as you were just speaking about, sort of in the middle of a circular firing squad and yelled, ready, aim, fire.
But Ambassador Feely, clearly the president is trying to use these tariffs to force some kind of action from Mexico. Would a 5% tariff, a 10%, 15%, would that have enough of an effect on Mexico that would force them to take some additional action?
Well, let's take a look at this from our perspective. If the United States has not been able to slow the outflow of Central American migrants coming through Mexico to the United States, I don't know what it is that makes the president believe that Mexico can miraculously do it. They have stepped it up quite a bit, but obviously not to his satisfaction. You know, take a look at the response from President Andrés Manuel López Obrador. Almost immediately, he drafted a 2-page letter. And in that letter, he appealed to President Trump's higher angels, if you will. He gave him almost a civics lesson, saying, you know, that Statue of Liberty shouldn't just stand for nothing and be an empty symbol. The Mexicans really don't have the ability to put up a wall. It's a porous border down there along Central America. They have been cooperating, and it's very clear that President López Obrador doesn't want a fight. He said that openly. So what he's done is he's dispatched his foreign minister to Washington, and he's going to meet with Secretary Pompeo next week. Now, I have to be honest, I don't know this, but I strongly suspect that Secretary Pompeo and I certainly know his lower staff who work on Western Hemisphere affairs, they were blindsided by this. They had no idea that this was coming. So I think the few days is probably for Secretary Pompeo to prepare as much as it is for Marcelo Ebrard, the foreign minister of Mexico, to prepare.
Ambassador Feely, I have to ask you, I've seen firsthand the impact on the U.S. system from this influx of families and children that are coming, and the numbers are undeniable. The U.S. system is being taxed in unprecedented ways. It has not responded to that taxation. And as a result, a lot of these families and children are suffering, as we reported earlier in the show. We've heard from the Trump administration that these are now desperate times, and desperate times call for desperate measures. So we only have a few seconds left, but I want to get your response to that. The administration is going to say they're just doing everything they can to try to stem the flow of people. What do you say to that?
Sure. I would say, why don't you, instead of putting tariffs on, take the $87 billion tax that these tariffs, if they go into effect, will represent to the American consumers, and send down 3,500 instead of 350 immigration judges. That way you can process these cases almost immediately. Instead of setting up detention facilities, set up expeditionary courtrooms down there so you can hear these asylum cases. We already know that about 80–85% of these asylum cases are rejected because these desperate people from Central America are not qualified under asylum law, and that's what they're asking for, and that's what's allowing them to stay. So I think that there are other better ways to do this than to simply use apples and oranges, take what is a trade mechanism and a trade tool and apply it to a migration issue that is undeniably difficult. Nobody denies that humanitarian crisis along the border, but it is my opinion that the crisis has been aggravated by the manner in which the Trump administration has decided to use only carrots and no sticks. If we got more judges down there, if we expanded the processing, if we were able to use other facilities down along the border to be able not to hold these people indefinitely, but to process them expeditiously, I think you'd have a much better resolution of the current situation.
I see you meant they're only sticks and not carrots as well. Ambassador John Feely joining us tonight from Bogota, Colombia. Thank you very much for your time.